Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to Drums and Drams. My name is Cameron, and today we're going to be taking a look at the newest release in Maker's Mark's wood finishing series. It's the first of two releases for 2021. This is the Maker's Mark FAE-01. All right, so like I said, today we're going to be taking a look at this FAE-01 coming to us from the Maker's Mark wood finishing series. Now, the wood finishing series was started back in 2019 with the release of the RC6 batch, and this was followed up in 2020 with the SE4xPR5. Now, in 2021, we're actually going to be seeing two releases from the series. The first is this FAE-01, and later this year, we will get the FAE-02. This series has really sort of taken the whiskey world by storm. I know a lot of my friends, a lot of other whiskey tubers, and just drinkers of bourbon everywhere have really enjoyed the Maker's Mark wood finishing series. And I think part of that is because it's great to see a limited release coming out of Maker's Mark, and also the flavor experimentation going on here is just refreshing. You know, it's something that we all like to see from a company that is, well, pretty traditional, although they do also have the Private Select series, which allows for some experimentation, but all of those tend to be very different from each other. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second here. Let me first preface this video by saying Maker's Mark, for me, although a lot of people like it, has never really agreed with my palate, I would say 80% of the time. The Maker's 101 was great. I really enjoyed that one. The balance of flavor and proof there I thought was excellent. And, you know, the 46 cask strength really depends on the day. But a lot of stuff from Maker's just doesn't quite do it for me, especially a lot of the Private Select bottles that I've had the chance to try. So I wanted to put that caveat on the beginning of this video so that if I say anything crazy, you take it with a grain of salt, as you always should with online whiskey reviews. So let's talk a little bit now about what's going on here with the wood finishing series, the FAE-01 in particular, and then we'll get right to the tasting. So the FAE-01, as with all of the wood finishing series and the Private Select bottlings, is created by finishing the Maker's Mark bourbon with barrel staves. And in the case of the FAE-01, we have 10 American oak, virgin toasted American oak, I should say, staves being used to finish it. So 10 staves, that's quite a bit. One side of the stave is seared, the other side is left raw. So again, we talk about experimentation here. Maker's is trying some new stuff out, and that's really, really exciting. Now for this video, for this review, I'm going to be first taking a look at the FAE-01. Then I'm going to put them side by side, or put it side by side, rather, with the previous two releases in the series, the RC6, the SE4xPR5, and just kind of see how these things compare. I'll say this. The reason I bought this bottle, since I don't really like Maker's that much, is because Amy Boehm, a wonderful supporter of the channel and patron, sent me these samples of the prior two releases, and so I decided let's buy the new bottling and make a review where I can compare them all for the very first time. So as you can see, I've had a few pours of the FAE-01 already, but this will be my very first experience with the other releases right here on this video. So let's get into this review. The FAE-01 is coming in, at least my bottling, at 110.6 proof. Some of them will be as low as 110.3. I think 110.6 is the highest. So there's a little couple tenths of a range of proof here. No age statement. Let's see what we get here on the nose. Okay, so right away you get a nice blend of sweet and spice. On the very top of this, I almost get like a buttercream element mixed with some vanilla. It's pretty sweet, pretty confectionery at the very top end of things, but I'm also getting a really nice cinnamon spice too, which both of those are pretty common notes in a lot of Maker's products. Yeah, but as soon as you get below that sort of spice layer with that really heavy cinnamon, you're starting to get into some nice fruity notes here. A lot of red fruit. I'm picking up some red apple right now. There's also some other stuff here, but I'm going to have to dig in a little bit more. Oh yeah, so candy sweetness, like strawberry candy sweetness, some cherry candy, I don't know, it's almost like sort of bright red fruits mixed with that red apple. The buttercream sort of subsides after the initial sort of wave hits your nose, but at the very beginning, that buttercream and vanilla was really, really inviting here. Yeah, I almost get like, something about this almost reminds me a little bit of like a sherried scotch in a way. It must be those red fruits and the way that maybe some of those confectionery notes are coming across, almost like barley sugar type elements. But I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because that's a very particular type of note. Yeah, you get a really nice woody quality to this that I'm not so familiar with when it comes to makers. I don't think that's a very common note, but it's almost like a pretty dry woodiness here on the nose. Yeah, the deeper you get in here, the more you realize that it has depth, it has really nice complexity, and honestly a pretty nice balance between sweetness, between spice, between woodiness. I think it does this very well. It doesn't come off particularly dark to me. I think the fruit aspect is very in the mid-range, very candy sweet. The woodiness is a little brighter and sharper and drier. Again, we have cinnamon in here. So the spicy elements, the sweet elements, everything seems to sit a little bit bright on the nose for me, but that could change when we get to the palate. All right, let's go to the palate now. Cheers. Whew. A really nice pop of spice there. The cinnamon is great. It actually gets darker on the palate, especially as the sip develops, as it moves from that spicy hit up front into the mid, into the back palate. It really starts to round out and get darker, like, yeah, almost like blackberry notes now on the palate, whereas on the nose, I was not picking that up whatsoever. So that's pretty unique. I gotta say, 110.6, not a high proof, not really in the grand scheme of things. Makers for me tends to always be really, really sharp. This thing drinks pretty easily, all things considered, I've got to say. Now, when we come back to the nose after that first sip, now I'm getting into some more like toffee candy notes and a little bit more of that darker profile. Yeah, part of it reminds me of wassail, if you guys have ever had that around Christmas time, that sort of spiced mulled wine, like apple, stewed apple type thing. I'm getting some things reminding me of that. That actually gets better. First sip, yeah, a little abrasive on the front of the palate, then it darkens up and gets really, really nice. Second sip here, starting to get some really nice warehouse oak funk going on in this. The dry wood that I got on the nose is getting more full, rich, rounded out, and sweet on the palate here. And I really, really like it. I am shocked right now. I can't believe that I'm enjoying this maker so much as I've tasted it over the last week or so. It's been hit or miss for me, erring on the side of being better than normal in terms of what I get from Maker's Mark. But this, the balance and the construction of this, it's spectacular. And then subjectively for me, just the flavor profile works. And then like now it's just cinnamon red hot candies, like atomic fireball type cinnamon right here on the nose. I think I've got everything I need from this. I should just also say that the finish is wonderful. It's lingering incredibly in the back of the throat here. It's just an appropriate finish for something like this. It's exactly what you want. So now let's move on to these comparisons. And let's first start off with the RC6, which is the first release in the wood finishing series, the 2019 release. That's over here, and it's coming in at 108.2 proof. So let's now see what we get here on the nose and how this compares to the FAE-01. All right, so here on the RC6, it's a little bit sweeter in some ways than the FAE-01. It's dark, it's rich, and it's still got some fruity notes going on in here, but I guess the caramel profile here, it's a little bit richer and sweeter in that way, and there's not nearly as much of that sort of dry wood element on the nose. Yeah, the nose on the RC6 is really, really nice. I like it quite a bit. Let's go to the palate here, allow myself to acclimate to it. We'll come back to the nose and just kind of see what happens with this one. That to me, again, a little bit more of a dark fruit element here. More obviously sort of, I don't want to, maybe like dark cherry, grape, blackberry. It's more obviously in that direction. The cinnamon spice is really great still. It's actually maybe a little more peppery on this batch than it is cinnamon for whatever reason. And yeah, I mean, the caramel profile is a little bit more rich and candy-like, whereas the FAE-01 didn't maybe have that sort of rich caramel base that the RC6 has. Now, when you come back to the nose here, you get a really great oak profile on the RC6. I am really enjoying that part of this. Now, let's put it next to the FAE-01. Let's do a quick side-by-side here. So with the RC6 to start and the FAE-01. Oh yeah, the FAE-01 is much brighter here on the nose. The woodiness, like I said, but also in terms of like just the general spice profile, the general fruit profile. Yeah, so the RC6 is pretty darn nice. It actually might agree with me a little bit more, at least right now, than the FAE-01. Let's do one final sip of the RC6. Yeah, that's great. The only thing, the only thing I'll say about the RC6, ooh, there's a chocolate note. Ooh, a little bit of milk chocolate in there. The one thing I'll say about the RC6 is that there is one weird, funky dimension to it that I can't quite pinpoint. It's almost like over-stewed fruits. And I'm about to do a review of the Balcones lineage. It reminds me of like that funky fruit element you get in the Balcones lineage. I'm getting a little bit of that in the RC6, but pretty darn solid there. Now, we're going to move on to the SE4xPR5, and we're going to see how this thing does. And this one is clocking in at 110.8 proof, so just about the exact same proof as the FAE-01. All right, so this one is much more vanilla forward. It is significantly less fruity than the other two batches. Yeah, it seems a little more traditional, I guess. Yeah, tons of vanilla on this batch. Like, very down the middle in terms of that type of profile. A great caramel sweetness to it. But as I dig in and try to find some element of fruitiness, I'm not really getting so much of it. There is a little bit of like that dry wood component also on the SE4xPR5, similar to the FAE-01. I could see a little bit of apple on this one as well. Yeah, maybe green apple on this one. Here I am being specific about colors of apples. This one, to me, has a little issue on the palate, maybe towards the mid to back palate. As it's developing, it falls off weirdly for a couple of seconds. It was a little bit odd, and it didn't seem, I don't know, it didn't seem well constructed there for a second. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. Now that's sort of like a structure note. That's sort of like a drinking experience comment. But in terms of the actual flavor profile here, I don't know. We'll see. Let's go back to the nose and see if we can dig out some more stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I'm getting, again, like that down the middle profile. There's a little chocolate on this one as well. Tons of vanilla, a nice caramel element to it. Some dry wood like the FAE-01. But yeah, I'm left longing for a fruity element from this one. Although it seems like the fruit has been replaced by vanilla and some chocolate. So I don't know. Let's do one last sip of the SE4xPR5. Yeah. And I would also say here that we might be getting a little bit more brown sugar, like richer baking spices than just sort of that sharp cinnamon note that I'm getting on the FAE-01. Let's put it next to the FAE-01 and do just a quick side-by-side nosing. I think through and through, the FAE-01 has a little more pizzazz than both of these other batches. I think it almost bridges the gap between them in some ways, like the darkness and the dark fruitiness of the RC6. That is present a little bit in the FAE-01 in terms of those sort of like bright candy sweet red fruits, and then also the vanilla elements, the woodiness of the SE4xPR5. That's also in the FAE-01. But the FAE-01 kind of combines these things in a bright way, in a complex way, and kind of in a sharp way almost. But it might be the best of both worlds. I don't know. Let's go back to it here and then we'll wrap this video up. This is a tough one. This is a really tough one because I think it's really going to come down to your flavor preference. The FAE-01 to me is the most approachable of the bunch. I think proof is balanced well here. I think you get so many dimensions that the complexity is just a positive thing. You know, I think people are going to find something they can latch onto in this pour and really enjoy. Whereas that RC6 has that dark, funky fruit and a little bit more oakiness going on, sort of traditional dark oak. And the SE4xPR5 is brighter with those very traditional bourbon notes. So it just depends on what you're looking for. I hope you can take these notes for what they are. I don't really want to rank these best to worst. I don't think that's a great way to do this. But for my purposes, I'm glad I have a bottle of the FAE-01 at the $60 MSRP that this thing commands. That's a great price for it. You really shouldn't pay over that. But, you know, if you enjoy the maker's profile and you want something, you know, a little bit more original, yeah, go for the FAE-01 and try to get your hands on these other releases too if they're still on shelves anywhere. But I think that's all I've got. So if you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification button and turn on all notifications to find out when I'm going live, which is at least once a week, and when I'm dropping new content. And if you'd like to support the channel, if you enjoy what you're seeing from Drums and Drams, consider joining the Patreon. You can find that link in the description below. We're building a great community over there, doing patron-only live streams, different giveaways, and just a lot of really cool stuff. Trying to build that community and a couple of different tiers depending on the level that you'd like to support at. I'm going to get out of here. This has been a very interesting comparison between these different Maker's Mark wood finishing series batches, and I'll be curious to see how this thing continues to develop, especially because I think I might be a Maker's fan now. So I don't want to say that too soon. Don't quote me on that. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to end with this pour of FAE-01. Cheers, and I'll see you next time here on Drums and Drams.